Hello, BookTube. I've got some more Hedgehog book recommendations for you, named after Joe Spivey's nickname for Christopher Russell, uh, our little corner of BookTube's cartoon Hedgehog, who hasn't made a video in about 10 years, but I guess he's been busy. But he made a video once upon a time where he recommended just a bunch of random books, and I loved the idea, so I grabbed it and have done a bunch of these videos myself, and the hunger for Hedgehog book recommendation videos has been bottomless on your part, which is insane. You don't have the time. You don't. That's why you're all personal heroes of mine, because you manage to read even though you don't have the time. Why on earth, with that little reading time, because you've got to spend 15 hours out of every 24 sound asleep on your little pillow, why on earth, given that, would you want to be bombarded with more and more and more book recommendations? But nevertheless, I don't make the rules around here, so we've got a few more book recommendations for you. We'll start with one that I could swear I reviewed. I could swear I wrote a review of this thing. I briefly tried to find it, but nowadays when I want to be sure whether or not I've written a review of something in the dim and distant past, I ask David Murphy instead of figuring out myself. I've written a lot of book reviews, but this is by Teresa Urbancic, and it is Slave Revolts in Antiquity, and it's very good. There have been many books on the subject of slave revolts in antiquity, because the thing to remember, of course, about antiquity is that it was entirely built on slave labor. No matter what society you talk about, it was entirely built on slave labor. That society was. And also that society was entirely rife with slave labor. It's not like it was built on it and then they saw the light. It's that when you walk down a crowded street in Athens or Rome or Ostia, every second person that you saw would be a slave. And that made the non-slave populations of all these places understandably nervous. Because the thought was often lurking in the background of a whole bunch of writers that this author cites, what would ever happen if those slaves got sick of this? I mean, they outnumber us. They live in our houses. They have our sleep schedule down pat. They have our guards have weapons. Our entertainers have weapons. What would happen if they decided to rise up? Of course, they did more than once, and the most famous of those being the Spartacus Revolt, and that has pride of place in this book. But this book very nicely does lots of others too. Writes up lots of others as well. It's a very interesting subject, well worth reading. This book is a trifle on the dry side, but comprehensively researched on an aspect of the ancient world that too many of its non-critical admirers in the dude bro world tend to forget. So well worth remembering. Then we have, this is a Hedgehog book recommendation, so I thought I'd throw this one on. This is All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren. A political novel. One of the two great political novels in American literature. As I always say about this book, there are two great political novels, and one is comedy and one is tragedy. This is the tragedy. It's dark. It's as dark as a summer night, a moonless summer night away from the main road in the deep south. And it's about a politician and his greasy rise to power and his echoes with Huey Long, the real life politician, the real life kingfish. But it's also much more so about fathers and sons. Much more so it is, which makes it confusing to me at first why this hasn't been embraced by the dude bros. And then I always remember why it hasn't been embraced by the dude bros, because it's blindingly brilliant. And they don't want that. They don't. If you read a book that's blindingly brilliant, it will pull you out of yourself, and there's no guarantee that it will put you back in the exact same shape that it found you. I know that you all already know that, because that's why we read. That's why we read. For that sense of absolute abandoned wonder. That sense of helplessness in the face of change. That sense of amazement is why we read. But it's not why dude bros read. They read to have confirmed their worldview that women are not quite human. among many other things. So they, even though a book like this hits all the Dude Bro notes, fathers and sons is at the heart of the Dude Bro worldview, they won't embrace it because it's too good. It stands a chance of changing them, and they don't want to change. So, but even so, other readers, if you think that you would not enjoy a novel about politics, much less deep Southern politics, try this, because you're wrong. It will grab you, it will pull you in, and it will put you through the ringer. Actually, the other great politics novel in American literature, The Last Hurrah by Edwin O'Connor, which is the funny book, will also put you through the ringer. At points, it definitely will. Then we have a romance. This is Scandal in Spring by Lisa Kleypas. This is a terrific modern Regency romance done with all of this author's ear for dialogue. She is just so good. I mean, I get asked all the time by people who don't read, who've never read a romance novel. They watch this channel. Maybe they've watched this channel for years. They know that that I read romance novels, and they also know my standard catch line when it comes to the fact that most people don't read romance novels, which is, your snobbery is not my problem. They know that tagline of mine, and they don't like it. They don't like thinking of themselves as book snobs. So they'll often ask me, where do I start? And I always tell them, this isn't the thing. There's a reason why I've never done a romance starter kit. Because usually with most readers that I know, it's not a question of where you start. It's a question of attitude. Most readers that I know would not read a romance with an open mind. So it doesn't matter that I recommend 10 good romances. That doesn't matter at all. Usually when those people press me for what they should read, I say, read Pride and Prejudice. And if you can like Pride and Prejudice, then you can like Georgette Heyer, you can like Lisa Kleypas, you can like a whole bunch of people. If you resist Pride and Prejudice, or if you finish it and think, well, it was a little book, I mean, it was minor, then you've got an attitude problem that needs adjusting before you get suggested any books. But if somebody were to come to me and say, well, okay, I don't think my attitude is really that bad. I literally don't know where to start. Who should I pick? Lisa Kleypas would be on that list for me. Sabrina Jeffries would be on that list for me. People where they're gonna please you if you can be pleased by this kind of stuff. So, Scandal in Spring is a tentative recommendation. Then we have a book by David Carroll, written when he was a wispy, wide-eyed boy. And it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. It's Following the Water. The subtitle is A Hydromancer's Notebook, and it's full of his own illustrations. That is not the publisher giving his book a pretty cover. That is his own illustration. And his book, he has a number of books like this. They're full of his own illustrations, and his illustrations are beautiful. Could easily have had a career doing that. And this is all very personal nature notes about wandering around in various aquatic habitats, marshes mostly, wetlands, and seeing what you see, mostly turtles. It's natural history writing with a singular kind of charm. I cannot recommend it strongly enough. Anything by this author, I cannot recommend strongly enough. Then we have something by Michael Cox and R.A. Gilbert. This is an anthology volume. It's one of many such on this subject, but it is one of the more effective ones. This is the Oxford Book of English Ghost Stories. In practically every Hedgehog book recommendation video, I recommend you one of something from the old Oxford book series. Oxford did 100 of these things, maybe more. The Oxford Book of Sea Stories, or of the Sea, or of adventure stories, or of you name it. Death, grieving, friendship. And this is their book, not just of ghost stories, but of English ghost stories. And you already know, with anthologies, things can go one way or another. You can get an anthology that is fairly pat and safe, or you can get an anthology that risks things, or you can get an anthology that does a little of both and just never picks a bad one. There are no duds in this book. It's a nice, hefty size, and it's fantastic. One of the best Oxford books they ever made. No matter where you stand on the subject of ghost stories, I think you'll be converted. Then we have Cicero. This is part of the Ancient Wisdom for Modern Times, or something like that, from Princeton University Press. You know the books I'm talking about. These little hardcovers that present ancient authors of Greece and Rome, in whole or in part, arranged around themes of modern self-help type obsessions. It started out that way, anyway. It started out as a kind of stocking stuffer joke for your more literary friends. But then the series kept going. It is still going. We see them on this channel. I get them from time to time. And the series became more ambitious. It started to be that you would get whole works, if they were short enough, on some self-improvement subject, and that they would be in new translations, sometimes with bilingual. So you get facing page with the Latin or the Greek. That immediately started to get my attention, and I want to show you one. We've seen most of these on this channel, so you've seen this one already. This is How to Grow Old. This is Cicero's book on how to grow old. What to think about, what changes. Of course, he was being whiny when he wrote this. He never actually did grow old. He just thought that he was, because he couldn't, get out of a chair without his hands or climb a flight of stairs without noticing it anymore. Anyone who is getting older, anyone who has crossed the threshold of 50 or 60 or, God forbid, 70, should probably learn to be a little quiet about those things. You'd find to complain until the cows come home about those aches and pains to a friend who's trapped enjoying your hospitality, your wine and calzones, but not to the whole world. Not write a book about it. And so that's demerit number one. And demerit number two is that, of course, Cicero's cod philosophy books, which De Senectitude is one, tend to be, quote fest, insufferable. He was, in a lot of ways, the Harold Bloom of his day, which would certainly have made Harold Bloom happy to hear. I mean it in a slightly more evaluative way, but like Harold Bloom, grudgingly though I hate to say it, Cicero is almost always worth reading. And this volume, it will fit in your pocket. And if you are getting a little older, if you are looking at your life and realizing, well, I don't have any guarantees anymore. Most of us, if we're lucky, go a long time not even thinking about that. We go a long time reposing in guarantees. And then it feels very sudden. I've said many times before that it often can feel very sudden. From Y Sainted Ma, it felt very sudden. I remember almost the exact day when it suddenly occurred to her, oh, wait a minute. But sooner or later, there comes a moment when you realize, I might not have 10 years left. Absent, unpredictable, unforeseeable catastrophes that no one can plan for, I might not have 10 years for. I certainly can't. I'm not guaranteed 10 years. I like to think that people should write a book on how to grow old only once they've felt that way, and Cicero never felt that way. He just felt that he had aches and pains. That's all. But still, his thoughts are really good on the subject, believe it or not. Then we have a figure that I've mentioned on this channel before. I'm a fan. I believe this figure is entirely out of print. This is Van Wyck Mason. And ordinarily I would mention him for other kinds of writing, but this is a historical novel. This is an old cover that I pulled off the internet, and it says, a spectacular novel of love and war in the ancient world. And it's not long enough. Mason had a really good knack for historical fiction. He wrote quite a bit of it that doesn't really... he is not in print anymore, I'm sure. And I'm pretty sure there are probably no ebooks of anything that he wrote. And that's a shame. But still, this is old style, good guy versus bad guy, potboilery, somewhat dated historical fiction. A modern reader, especially a reader born in the 21st century, would probably not know what to make of this. But any of you who've read The Robe or The Silver Chalice or big historical fiction, Anthony Adverse, things like that, you're going to love this book. If you can find a copy, you're going to love it. And like me and the two other people I've ever known who've ever read this book, you're going to wish that it were longer. I remember reading it's a piece of historical fiction. Well, I've read a lot of historical fiction that wasn't good and thought it was, that went on way too long. I read one called, was it called The Etruscan? Not Miko Waltari. It was somebody else. Well, anyway, you read a lot of big historical fiction that has one adventurous set piece in the middle, or maybe two, and you think, this could have been a lot shorter. This you will think it could be longer. You'll feel that way if you could find it. I don't know if Lysander is findable. Then let's see here. Then we have a sad book. This is by Mark Avery, and this is called A Message from Martha. And the Martha in question is the last passenger pigeon who died a little over 100 years ago in a zoo. Martha was the last of her kind. A kind that famously, once upon a time, darkened the skies at midday when a flock was in flight. The whole of a day. So if a flock of passenger pigeons was flying overhead, it would darken the sky for hours, maybe longer than that. They were once the avian equivalent of the American buffalo, where their numbers seemed limitless. And their numbers weren't limitless. They became extinct. So, and this book is about that. It's about the American passenger pigeon, but it's also a meditation on extinction. So it is a little sad. Martha, that one last remaining passenger pigeon, had some famous visitors at her zoo. To look at her and muse on the poignant metaphor of looking at the last of her kind, or just to take it in humble silence. And this book captures a lot of that feeling of it. So well worth your time, even though it's a little sobering. Then we have Bob Drury and Tom Clavin. When these two do a book, they are so good together. The subject of this book is good anyway. Almost nobody could do a boring book, but this is Blood and Treasure. Their big nonfiction work about Daniel Boone, who was seen as a larger-than-life semi-legendary figure even in his own lifetime, and in some ways with good merit. And boy, oh boy, does this do him justice. It doesn't completely sate my yearning for a new biography of Daniel Boone. The last full-dress biography of Daniel Boone that I read is probably 40 years old, and it came close to making Boone boring. It was very academic. I would like a big, boisterous biography of Daniel Boone in addition to this, but this will do. This will do very well. If you like reading about, the frontier busting days of America, don't miss this. Your library will have a copy of this, or can get one. Boy, this iPad is misbehaving, isn't it? No, but here we go. We can finish up with the Farallon Islands off the coast of California. These raw, jagged teeth of islands off the coast of California that are popular breeding grounds for seals, and so the waters are rife with great white sharks. And this is Susan Casey's book on that subject, The Devil's Teeth, a terrific shark book. Just terrific. There have been thousands and thousands of shark books. There haven't been many that were terrific. And this is one of them. Boy, oh boy. It's natural history to the extent that you can do that. Sharks, great white sharks especially, are somewhat mysterious. So you can learn a lot from them by watching their behavior off the Farallones, but not. There's a lot you won't know either, where they are the rest of the year, for instance, unless they're tagged, in which case you can largely follow them. It is an amazing experience to look out at this stretch of water in the right season of the year, because if you do it in the right season of the year at the right time during the day, if you just have nothing to do and you sit there looking at that stretch of water, you will see blooms of red as kills are made. I seem to remember that there was a human being who was crazy enough to want to do, as a publicity stunt, a swim from the shore to the Farallon Islands, which is suicide. Maybe I'm thinking of that wrong. Maybe that was in a novel. But this, as nonfiction, as natural history about great white sharks, and at a time when they are doing nothing but predating, is wonderful. A shark book to find and read. So there you go. That is the only other picture here is the baby bean. Oh, so there are some more Hedgehog book recommendations for you. No idea what you'll make of any of these. Maybe some of them will be just the right book at just the right moment, which would be great. But anyway, I'll wrap this up until next time. Thank you, BookTube.